Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So to highlight what Greg had to say in the last segment, they really do have us by the bulbs. I'm looking at, one of the Gridley customers who has said, he got a $17,000 electric bill. I got to tell you, if I got a $17,000 electric bill, it would only be there would only be the next bill that would exceed that, which would be the heart attack payment that would come on a $17,000 electric bill. It's crazy, and this shouldn't be allowed to stand. And look, Greg was right. The whole reason that this has happened is because the leaders in Texas, going back to George H.W. Bush and all the way forward, have chosen to put the people in Texas in this situation. The question is, where do we go from here? Will we invest and get them hooked into the rest of the country, or will they continue to be allowed to underinvest and, gouge? Now, I'm here to share some thoughts on what's going on down in Texas and our need for massive investment. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you tonight.
So I'm looking at a $17,000 bill.
It reminds me, one wise, Democrat on Capitol Hill, when I was a young staffer, said something that always stuck with me, is that corporations believe in the socialization of risk and the privatization of profit. So, if they get into deep water or they're going under, they certainly want the government to intervene to help them in some way with grants or loans or forgiveness or some other way through. And they aren't always as kind to their customers. And there's a lesson in that, obviously. One is that that's not a good governing principle for anybody, and that there has to be some balance, and that there are sensible regulations that you can have that will protect consumers and also make sure that there isn't one big government running everything, which I guess is the irrational fear that a lot of folks have. But as you also alluded to, Rick, it points out the need for us to just examine our system of infrastructure. And by that, I mean everything from our energy grid to our dams, roads, bridges, ports, all of that, to see how resilient they are. And some of them, we know, have been in need of an upgrade for decades. And so we better get to it.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers is saying that our electric grid gets a D+. And I know, as Chris Farley said in the movie Tommy Boy, a D+ isn't the grade they like to give out very often.
No, it's special circumstances, I guess. And speaking of that, Rick, the American Society of Civil Engineers is going to have an updated report that should be out, I think, by the end of next week. And so we can take a look at that grade book and look at it closely and see where we need to be making those investments. And I think that will actually be a pretty useful roadmap as the Congress moves ahead to investing in infrastructure and to implementing the Biden administration's Build Back Better plan.
Yeah, now this is the weird thing for me, Scott, because I guess I'm old enough to remember when building infrastructure and investing in the country used to be something that was nonpartisan. I know people love to say bipartisan, but it was nonpartisan. It didn't matter. We all needed roads that we don't have to get the car aligned every couple of weeks, bridges that we don't have to say a prayer to get to the other side. That when we turn on the internet, it actually works. I mean, we want this stuff. Why is it we can't seem to get something going? Look, during the 2009, there were all these shovel-ready programs were going to be done, and there was a push to do infrastructure there. The same thing, Trump comes into office. We're going to have massive infrastructure. He had this great, gazillion-dollar plan that Wall Street was going to pay for. Nothing. How is it that we continually talk about it? I've known you for years. We've been talking about this for years, and nothing is getting done.
Yeah. I mean, we made a one-time investment in infrastructure in the aftermath of the Great Recession, but it was like a booster shot, and it was brief, and it was a compromise, right? And that's kind of the conversation we're having now is like how much should the Democratic proposals, the trillions of dollars, be discounted because of Republican concerns when they may never support it anyway. I will say I'm more optimistic this year, and I'm more optimistic for a couple of reasons. First are the circumstances that we're all living in now, and I think that more Americans, irregardless of their political persuasion, realizes the vulnerabilities that we have as a nation, whether you live in Texas or Michigan or anywhere else. Second is that I think you have a leader who not only will talk about infrastructure, but who will invest political capital to get it done. And, Trump had countless infrastructure weeks. As you and I both know, Rick, they all turned out to be jokes. And they were jokes because he stepped all over the message. And he wasn't focused. And I don't know that he was particularly serious. He never had a serious infrastructure plan other than to how to get private banks involved with it in order to make a buck, rather than to look out for equitable transportation systems in the future that can help more people achieve mobility when they need to. And so I think that works in our favor too. And then I think one of the other facts that it's kind of aligned, I think on the positive side here, is that I think the folks, when it comes to fiscal or economic concerns, there's a lot less concern about how to pay for it now than there may have been 3 or 4 years ago. There's this realization that we really that it makes sense to borrow now that rates are cheap, that the needs are great, and that the situation in 4 or 5 years isn't likely to be the same. The needs are likely to be greater, and the borrowing costs are likely to be higher. So it makes economic sense to do it now. And so that's fingers crossed, it's going to take a lot of work. We're putting boots on the ground to try to get this done, and we hope more Americans will join us in this effort as well. And we're not alone. I mean, there's a lot of people within the labor community, within the business community, and local officials who are looking to get this done. And so I'm more optimistic than I have been. I think that any other time that we've talked, Rick, about the opportunity for a serious $1 trillion plus investment in infrastructure.
Before I get into backing off of that, I want people to know that you guys are putting together an action plan. You can write to President Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can take action, and the Let's Build a Made in America Future action you guys have got going on. Again, we'll get links out on social media how we can do that. But I wish I shared your optimism. I did, because I think the best chance we had for any big infrastructure plan was back at the beginning of the Trump presidency, or at any time during the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
Simply because I believe the Democrats would have gone, yeah, we need it, and would have come along, just like they did when the CARES Act passed, just like they did whenever they wanted something to move forward. The Republicans right now, and I know you're not a partisan group, but I'm looking at the landscape. We can't get a rescue package pushed through. McConnell and the Republicans are signaling that nobody's going to support it. I'm seeing 2009 happen all over again, where it's going to be another year or two of Senate gridlock because McConnell's not going to do anything. And we're not going to get to 60 votes. So if we can't figure out how to get all this infrastructure spending into budget reconciliation, we're just going to have more talk.
Sure. Look, no doubt there are obstacles, and perhaps I am overly optimistic, but I do think that that we have some alignment on this that we may not see on other issues, and I'll explain why. The investments that may be made in things like clean energy or wind or solar, a lot of people view those as blue state issues, but let's be serious about this. The biggest wind production in the United States is in Texas. Solar, it's in red states as well, and blue states. It's Arizona, Nevada, California. You have big wind in Kansas, and so it transcends kind of those political lines. And I don't know of a single congressional district that doesn't have a need for a new bridge or an upgraded highway or an upgraded dam or port or waterworks system. I mean, the needs are everywhere. And so I think and the other thing is that there's a roadmap forward on this. And so I do think that, infrastructure in the past, we've been able to get it passed with bipartisan majorities most of the time. And the really big things that have been done have had a lasting, multi-generational impact. I think back to Eisenhower and the interstate highway system, right? And how that impacts all of us today, and the remarkable foresight but behind that for, connecting people and also creating more mobility. And I realized that there were, challenges that came along with that, but it was a remarkable achievement. And I do think that there's the opportunity here now. And I think the other organizing factor, and we talk about this as well, is, and I think Biden articulates this quite well, is that, China is decades ahead of us on clean energy investment and infrastructure investment. And no one wants to see America fall farther behind, particularly as China is growing again and is watching what we're doing. So I do think that, that there's an impetus, a security impetus now that may not have existed before.
No, especially when you look at the fact that our water infrastructure has been hacked. All of the cyber attacks that are going on. We need massive investment and massive upgrades in doing that. Maybe take some military money from that, because that is a national security issue that we most certainly have to deal with. And I hope you're right. I hope that people are going to look at this differently than maybe they did, 3 or 4 years ago. Because I'll tell you, when Trump came into office, I was saying, okay, let's get that infrastructure going. I'm with you. Let's do it. And as you pointed out, all we got were pictures of him looking funny behind the wheel of a truck.
Yeah. We got infrastructure weeks, which turned out to be a punchline on late night television. So we got to reclaim that. And I see a transportation secretary Pete Buttigieg, who I think is going to help to drive this forward. And I do think that the congressional leaders understand the value and the importance of this. It's going to create jobs. It's going to leave a lasting legacy, and it will help to transform our economy. So there's all sorts of good reasons to do it. And I am not taking anything for granted. And even though I am optimistic, I know that we're going to have to do the very hard work to get this both revved up and then across the finish line, and to make it a reality, because it will be worth it. There's going to be millions of good blue collar jobs that are going to be created if we can get this done.
And the jobs that come out of the people having money in their pocket. There's all of the spin-off jobs. But for me, right now is the most important time to do this, because as they're saying, as we come out of this pandemic and hopefully over the summer things open back up, I'm hoping Biden's right. I'm hoping everybody's vaccinated by July, so that we can begin to rebuild the economy and get the engine going. The sad reality, and you know this as well as anyone, is that we're not going back to the old economy. There are going to be jobs that are never coming back, and we need those transition jobs, if for no other reason to keep people employed, that infrastructure could provide, and apprenticeship programs to get people into these trades. This is a perfect time for this.
I completely agree. There's the construction jobs. There's the jobs in the manufacturing. You think of making the solar panels or the parts that go into the wind turbine, or the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, or the steel for the bridges themselves. And so there's a lot of manufacturing jobs that can be created out of an infrastructure investment. And then it makes our economy more efficient. And so we're able to invest in the future, invest in career and technical education, invest in innovation. And the thing that Trump didn't get done, even though he talked a lot about this on the trade front, is that we didn't grow our trade pie globally. In fact, it shrank in a lot of ways. We are not, our export performance has been really poor. Imports are coming surging in as fast as they were before the Trump administration, and now from places like Vietnam and Mexico, in addition to China. And so we've got our work cut out for us. But if we can expand that pie, it is going to be possible for us to grow manufacturing jobs, to grow those blue collar jobs, even at a time when our economy is undergoing a dramatic transformation that, as you said, is going to result in a lot of displacement and a lot of churn. And so with the right policies, we'll end up on the other side of this in a better place. But if we don't do anything, it's going to be very, very grim for too many workers, particularly those who don't have a four-year college degree, and those who have come from situations where they haven't had advantages or where they face unique challenges. And so we got to get this done. Our future is riding on it.
No, I'm right there with you. Before I let you go, Wally Ademo, I think is how you say his name, just testified to be the number 2 at Treasury. And he came out and said, look, our best weapon against China is teamwork with the rest of the world. And it's something exactly that we've been talking about. I'm curious, what do you think of Wally Ademo?
Well, look, I think there's potential, and no matter there's lots of personalities that are coming back from the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, and we didn't always see eye to eye on trade. But I do think that there is a new viewpoint that has emerged, and I think it's a different one. I think it's a sophisticated one. I think the folks in the Obama administration felt very burned by their experience with China and don't want to replicate that. And so I do think that we should seek to work with our allies whenever we can on China. There are some cases where we're going to have to provide the leadership. If it's calling out China for a genocide against Uyghurs, and we're the first ones to stand up to the plate and do that, and Trump was, and Biden has continued that. Look, that's what we're going to have to do, because the United States has been a global leader. But I do think that Biden can interact with our allies in a way that will bring them along rather than repel them. Which was kind of the Trump approach, and to treat them as hostile. Yeah. In fact, more hostile than like Putin or Xi Jinping in some ways. And so I think that will be helpful because we obviously, there's a lot of common interests we have as democracies around the world in ensuring that the democratic point of view is the prevailing one.
Good stuff. Scott, I appreciate the time. Hope people will check out the website, AmericanManufacturing.org. Take action. Let's build a Made in America future. Scott Paul, appreciate the time.
Rick, thanks so much. Keep up the great work.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.